Hi there, thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. Today's video, I am going to be going over the basic functions of a sewing machine. Now, I am demonstrating on the 2277 Tradition Essential Singer. However, everything I discuss today is relative to any machine that you may be using and really just universal for sewing in general. I often hear that people have their mom or their grandma's old machine, they just don't know how to use it or they want to get started. However, the machine itself can be pretty daunting. So my goal for today's video is to equip you with that basic knowledge and understanding of how this works and how to work it so that you can take it out of the box and just jump into any project no matter your skill level. So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing all of the basic functions that you see on the machine, how to thread it, how to understand the bobbin, basic sewing tips, and I'll also be going over how to overcome any problems you may run into while sewing and what could be the cause of it. I hope this video finds you a lot of value. It is going to be a longer video, so I have included timestamps down below. But with that being said, I just want to hop into the video and get started. If this video does give you any sort of value, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. It really helps out my channel. But with that being said, let's just hop right in. Okay, so the absolute three things you need to get started are going to be: one, you need a set of needles. I'm using ballpoint, but you can also use universal. I would always have extra of these because when you are beginning to sew, you do break them a lot, and you want to make sure that you are prepared. Next, you're going to need thread. I would stick with this size or larger. Anything smaller may not be enough, but these last you a really long time. And lastly, you're going to need bobbins. Now this is what a standard metal bobbin looks like. However, you could also use a plastic bobbin. These both work fine. As long as there's some sort of hole on the top for the thread to go through, you are good to go. Okay, so this is your machine straight on. I'm gonna go through all the functions, what each does, but I'll go a little bit more in depth on each one later on in the video. So starting off, these are your stitches. The most commonly used is the straight stitch, also the zigzag stitch. There's other stitches on this as well, but I'm gonna be really honest with you, I hardly ever use them. These are the two I use the most. However, if you are doing buttons, this rectangle one is going to be for buttonholes, and I'll explain what different attachments are later on. The second knob is your length. Now this is how far your stitches are. So a 0 means the needle is going up and down in one spot. There's no length in between the stitches because it's staying in the same spot. And then 4 would be considered a baste stitch. So if you're following a pattern and it calls for a baste, you're gonna move it to number 4 because that means there's more space in between each stitch and it's a more loose, easily removed stitch, I guess you could say. I leave it on the 2 because that's just gonna be your standard stitch. So here you have your tension and your width. I keep tension on a 2 and then width on about a 3. This is your reverse button. When your foot is on the pedal and you're sewing and you push this down, the needle goes backwards. I'll explain how to use this better later on. And then up here is everything you're gonna need to thread your machine and bobbin. This is the knob that controls your needle. So as you can see down here, the needle is going up and down. That is manually moving it. Right here, this little section comes off. And if you just move this down, this is where your bobbin is located. And this is what you are going to need to thread. And I'll show you guys how to do that. And then if you just got this machine for the first time, take this off and look inside this secret compartment. It comes with tools to clean the machine, like more so in here. I store my thread, bobbins, and just a bunch of random stuff. But it's always nice to know that you have storage in your machine. Most of the time I keep this off because I like to access my bobbin pretty easily. And then turning the machine around, this lifts up the foot up and down. So when you're sewing and you're done with your stitch, you tend to use this to lift it up. And then when you're about to sew and you want to hold the fabric in place, you use this to keep it down. And then this right here is a blade. So when you're done sewing, you can move your thread and just cut it there without needing scissors. So this is your machine in an overview, and I will show you how to thread it. Okay, so now we're going to thread our machine. Go ahead and place your thread on its holder, and I like to put the stopper in. Now, grab your bobbin. I'm gonna be using the one with 2 sides of holes. And you're going to place your thread in just one of the top ones, not both, just the top one. And I'll explain in a sec. Grab your thread and you're gonna wrap it around this silver notch. And it does catch it. There we go. Now, once you have it from here all the way around, you're gonna thread it on your bobbin. So here's your thread. Place it on one of the top holes of the bobbin and hold it. So it should look like this. Grab your bobbin and place it on this stand, like so. So now you're holding the thread on top of the bobbin. Push this so it's as close to this as possible. This goes left and right. So once it's locked here, now your foot pedal is controlling this, and this is how it's gonna thread. So once it's locked in, continue to hold the top of your thread, push on your foot pedal. Okay, so when you're done, simply cut the thread, and this is what it should look like. Depending on how much sewing you're doing is how much I fill the bobbin. This is like a good amount. You don't have to fill it too often, and hardly ever do I fill it all the way to the outside unless I'm doing multiple garments. So I would say this is a good amount of thread to fill on your bobbin. You can cut this super short if you want to. This is not super important, but this is what is going to get threaded into the machine. So now that our bobbin is threaded, we're going to thread the machine. So with your thread still on its stand, the first step is putting it through this little loop back here, and then right around this silver notch again. So once we finish threading it on this thing, we're going to thread it down around this, up here, and then back down to the needle. For this step right here, you want to manually move the needle up until this pops up. So you want that up at the very top. So now let's grab our thread. We're gonna move it down number 2, just around the 3rd, up on the right side of this metal tip, around it, and then back down. And you'll be able to see where it catches right here. This is the needle moving, and it should be holding that thread, as you can see in the camera view. This right here is the #1 common error you'll get when sewing. If anything happens in the machine, in the stitch, something skips, you run into a problem, always check right here, because this can easily become unthreaded. And if this isn't threaded, it does mess up your stitch, and you'll notice that. So this is the first thing I always check to see when sewing. If I ever run into a problem, is I make sure that this piece itself is threaded. Once your thread is down at number 5, we are ready to thread the needle. Now you can simply thread the needle manually, right here, or like many machines have, like this one, there is a helper. Now to use the helper, you push this white foot down, it wraps around a claw right around the hole of the needle. Now what you're gonna do is, while you hold this down, hold the thread across that claw, and when you let go, it will simply loop in the thread. I'll show you right now. You're gonna hold this down, like grab the thread, hold it across, and then let go. And behind my needle, there's a tiny loop and I just pull. So from here, place your thread in the middle of the foot and then in the circle, and then just let it lay to the left of your machine. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to threading your bobbin. Now you wanna pay attention to a couple things. You want to make sure your bobbin is secured in place. If you were to hit it, you can tell it's locked in. It's not turning in a circle, which is good. And then this always is going to face up. And then this right here it's a lever. And when you push it out, it pulls your whole bobbin out. Now, this is what the bobbin casing looks like. Again, this is a little lever that opens and closes. And then this is where your bobbin is gonna go. What's also important is the top of the bobbin. There's a tiny little slit right here. And then up here, a little gap. So we're gonna be putting the thread through that slit up and right here. And I'll show you how to do that. Once you have your filled bobbin, you want it to face thread over top facing the right. And it's gonna simply lay in the bobbin casing like so. So now you have your bobbin laid in here and the thread on the right-hand side. Now it naturally catches right here. And then once it does, just move it up, and bring it over. And now you have it up here. If you face it right side, this is what it would look like. Now to place it in, you're gonna open up the lever and slowly put it on the bobbin. You'll feel that it's locked in and close it. Oh, see, this is not okay. So this is a mistake. This means it didn't catch. You don't want your bobbin that way, it won't work. So I'm gonna take it out and I'm just gonna redo it. I have it open in my hand and I'm gonna place it in. I kinda hear it, I'm gonna let it go and I know it's locked in now. So you might have to practice that a couple times, but as soon as it's locked in, you are good to go. So once we have the bobbin secured into place, we have to bring this thread up and through the machine. So how you're gonna do that is manually turn the needle down one full rotation. And you're doing this manually with the knob on the left. You might have to do it a couple times, but then you'll see that this thread right here grabs. The needle is up, I could see that it grabbed. And then what I like to do is grab a pin or your scissors and pull. And here you will see that that thread gets caught and comes to the front. So now you should have two threads, one from the bottom and one from the needle, hanging on the right side of your machine. The next thing I'm going to talk about is how to change your needle. Now, oftentimes when you're beginning to sew, you tend to break needles pretty easily. So this screw right here turns, and that's what tightens this needle into place. So all you have to do if you break it is push this forward and then pull out the needle. This is your case of needles. You can lift this down, push this back, and then grab a new one from here. You want to make sure that the flat side is facing the back of the machine and the rounded side is facing you. Then you simply just pop this needle. So just pop it right here, tighten, and then you're just gonna rethread your machine. Well, another thing that you are gonna wanna know how to change is this right here. Now this is a standard foot for a straight stitch or any sort of stitch. But there's different feet for buttonholes, some folded over hems, and different like sewing techniques, but this is the one that you're gonna use most commonly. If you ever need to change this, you just push this right here in the back and it lets it go and it comes out. And this is what the standard foot looks like that you should be using most often. So push, it releases, put the foot down, and it picks it back up. So now I'm gonna show you the difference between the straight stitch and the zigzag stitch, as well as the different lengths and how to use the reverse button. So starting off with the straight stitch, both of your threads to the left and your top one underneath the foot. You place your fabric underneath the foot, drop the foot so it's nice and secure. And then with the foot pedal, you're just gonna go straight. Lift. I manually lift up the needle, give it a back and forth until you can feel that it's free, and then cut it on the side. This is a straight stitch with a 2 length. Next, I'll show you how to do the zigzag. So moving it over to the zigzag setting, place it under, drop your foot, and then slowly hit the foot pedal. Lift up, pull, and cut on the side of your machine. Now this is what a zigzag stitch looks like. This is most commonly seen like in denim, or if you're using any sort of fabric that has stretch, you would want to use a zigzag versus a straight so that with the stretch, your seams also have a little bit of movement. Before you start any sort of stitch, straight, zigzag, you want to secure it in place. So for instance, these 2 stitches don't really have anything securing where it began. So that could easily come out. What you would want to do is 2 different ways. One, start with your length on 0. One, 2, 3 in the same place. Switch to 2 and then begin to sew. When you're done sewing, go back to 0 and go up and down a few times. This locks in that stitch so that it doesn't come undone. So then the second way to do that would to be using the reverse. Now the reverse just goes back on the stitch you just did, and I'll show you how I use it. So when you start, reverse, reverse, straight, reverse, reverse, done. I always lift up my needle, lift up my foot, and then cut it. Here you can see where it reinforced the beginning and the end of your stitch. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you what a base stitch looks like. We know what a 2 length is, which is pretty small. This is what a 4 length is, or most commonly known as a base. The one on the right is a based stitch. You can see there's more space in between each notch, I guess you can call it. Whereas this is your standard 2. This one takes longer to do, and this one is really quick. The reason why you use this one is to hold 2 pieces of fabric together as like a temporary hold, and then you can easily take this out. With any base stitch or 4 length, you wouldn't need to worry about securing it on each end because they're commonly used just to be like a temporary hold. But that's the difference in lengths. Okay, so that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching this. If you watched this all the way through, I commend you. I really hope that you found value in this and that this helps you just to get started, to be able to take out your machine and start on any project. If you did enjoy today's video, please give it a big thumbs up. Also, if you could subscribe to my channel, that would mean the world to me. But that is it. I hope you guys all have a good rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.